Hello and welcome to another Yale School of Management Careers Alumni webinar. My name is Cindy Cornell. I'm the career coach for working professionals here at the Yale School of Management. Today we are going to be talking about articulating your personal brand. Before we get started, I'd just like to ask you, what do you think people say about you when you're not in the room? That's really what we're going to be digging into today. First things first, I'd love for you to focus on our time together. We have about an hour to spend together today. Ask questions through the Zoom Q&A whenever they come up to you. We will spend time at the end of the presentation following up on your personal questions. And you can also reach out to me for a coaching appointment if you choose to. This session is being recorded and it will be shared directly with those of you who are live today. And it will be shared also in the Yale Library of Career Webinars, which is growing on the career site of the alumni portal. That's also where you can book the coaching appointment with me as well. So today's agenda, we're going to be talking about some branding basics, and then we'll speak more specifically about acts you can take to personally build your brand, and then putting it out there into the world. So by the end of the time together, I'm hoping that you'll have both a framework within which to consider and evaluate your personal brand, as well as some specific takeaway exercises to begin to craft and hone your existing brand. I do have a lot to share in terms of foundational ideas, which I'll do at the beginning of the presentation. And I just want to encourage you to recognize some of this as not being new. We've talked about this in other career webinars. We're bringing it all back together in different ways to support your ongoing career development and leadership development. So let's dive into brand image. The idea of personal branding was first coined by Tom Peters in a Fast Company article in 1997. Of course, personal brands existed long before that. The internet, though, has changed how we actually interact and communicate, and it's dramatically changed professional communications in that regard. Companies have known for years that brand image has an impact on buying behavior. The same holds true for you. If you don't care about your own brand, do I really want you to be a steward of mine? Your failure to clearly articulate your brand doesn't mean you don't have one. It simply means you don't own it yet. Hopefully we'll change that by the end of the session today. So what is the state of your brand today? Are you showing up transactionally? Are you undifferentiated as a commodity? Hopefully not. Do you have some fair weather fans? Maybe you're a little bit distinguished, but you really haven't kind of gotten to that in-demand place yet where you are consistently sought after. That's really what we're going to go for here today. And to do that, we need to actually figure out what you want to say and who you want to say it to. A couple of points, though, specifically talking about the pandemic, your ROI on your branding is going to be an impact to whether you're going to get and command the salary that you're looking for. So I do encourage you to kind of spend time on that. And you recognize that your digital first impression is your modern day handshake. So how people see you on LinkedIn is how they're going to remember you. Something to think about with that as well is that people's first impressions are those which they actually tend to hang on to and they're hesitant to let go of. So if you have a kind of a wet, fishy handshake first impression, as people see your LinkedIn, primacy and anchoring says that it's going to be harder for you to unravel that. So I do want you to kind of think about whether you want to make this impression. Your audience is out there and scrolling at all hours, and your on-screen presence matters. So let me just speak to that for a second as well. Lots of ways to connect online. Right now we're on Zoom. There's also Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, Cisco WebEx, Skype, so many different media for us to communicate within. I want you to think about being really up to date with all of them so that if your first impression happens to be in person as opposed to just on a screen in terms of a LinkedIn connection or something like that, you're actually making a great first impression in video as well. So what's the same about branding? Authenticity is and always has ruled the day. Differentiation is still key. So you want to actually stand out from everyone else. You need to be clear about the value that you deliver and who's going to be excited by that. Opportunities are still available to those people who are present. So if you're not online when people are looking for the solution to their problem, you're going to miss the opportunity. So again, take the time to create your brand. It does matter, and digital is a big part of that these days. It does take some work to get your brand right, to figure out what aligns with your interests and your values, what's on brand for you. For many of us, that's an ongoing question that we're asking, and we're working on figuring that out on a regular basis, and it evolves too. Your brand isn't about bragging. I get that a lot from people who are hesitant to put some of these ideas out there into the world. It's about sharing your professional gifts. It's an invitation to connect, letting people know how you might collaborate with them for your mutual benefit. You're better together. Reviewing other brands is a great way to get ideas, but copying somebody else's brand isn't likely to get you the same great results that it's going to get for them. Memorable in-demand brands are unique and well differentiated from others, and you deserve your own brand. You know a lot more about branding than you've perhaps given yourself credit for. You're an everyday consumer of brands. You have strong opinions about brands. You have relationships with brands, and you in the past have also severed some of those relationships with brands as well. Strong brands are easily recognizable and you're drawn to them or not. This is important. Not all brands are for everyone, and you are not for everyone. Please don't make the mistake of trying to be all things to all people. Companies invest significantly in their brand design. Management and communications, their strategies are informed by research and trial and error, seeking specific reactions from their target consumers. Strong brands are really intentional about their positioning among competitors and are clear about their unique characteristics. The strongest brands stand on their own merit without need to directly compare themselves with anybody else. They speak really clearly to their audience's wants and needs. So what does this mean if you're searching for a new role? How does this apply? Well, first, I want you to flip your focus away from what many people do. Stop applying to any job that you can do, and let's get really, really clear about the jobs that you want to. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. I'd like you to be more discerning. What would you love to do? Let's start with sharing that. You've heard executive recruiters in recent webinars share the same. When you're clear about what your offer is, what types of problems you're excited to solve, and the impact you'd like to have in the world, that messaging invites in new opportunities and potentially steers you away from some of those things that you've always done. Your brand is going to invite in those new opportunities so you can explore what's possible, and you can seek to learn whether the role and environment is one in which you would thrive, where you'd be inspired to do your very best work. A great job in an environment where your values aren't aligned with others isn't a great job. What we're evaluating here effectively is brand compatibility, yours and theirs. Does this connection for you long-term make sense? Does it fit in with a long-term story that you might want to tell about yourself? I've mentioned in prior webinars, David Brooks' TED Talk, should you live for your resume or your eulogy? That might be a good one to watch as you're thinking about what your long-term brand might look like and what might fit in as a next step for you. You can't create a meaningful, memorable brand without a little bit of work. So I have shared with you a couple of questions that you might take away and work on your own after the session. In addition to these basic questions, you can think about what you want to be known for and what qualities you want to be known for. There's details and nuances to your brand that you might want to spend some time thinking through as well. You can also think about what makes a meaningful brand at all. Think of examples in practice and apply those same principles to yourself. What are brands that really resonate with you? What makes you like those? What makes you not like those? And really kind of put yourself through that same type of a screen. Again, you can find ideas by considering others, how they present, what messages they're known for, what their social media presence looks like, etc. You don't want to copy them though, so please be careful about that. I do want you to know the difference here. We have these aspirational ideas about what our brands are, but how we see ourselves isn't necessarily how the world sees us. So I want you to kind of do some work to make sure that they're aligned. This particular example, these ideas aren't very aligned. It's pretty out of whack. You'd want to have those two circles be closer together, meaning that aspirational brand, or how you want to be seen, is in fact how you are perceived by the world. Your brand is all about packaging yourself with certain themes. Those include your academic credentials and your professional experience, your activities and interests, your dress, how you show up, among other things. It's a multi-channel endeavor, online and in person. When all of these things are taken together and packaged as a theme, it gives an evaluator a sense of where you come from, what you're doing, and what your goals are. Others' impressions of you create their reality. Their beliefs trump facts. So again, remember that idea of primacy and anchoring. You want to make sure that it's easy for people to remember and hold on to things that are true, and that you want them to repeat and share with others as well. It's not all bad. Sometimes people might know you for things that you don't actually see as being superpowers when you're going through this evaluative process to see how other people see you and compare it to how you want your brand to be seen. You might learn that you're known for some things that you hadn't actually previously given yourself credit for. So pay attention to both sides of this. While you can't control what others think or feel about you, you can influence their perception. And this is super important to remember. If they don't say it about you when you ask about it, you don't own it. So think about what you definitely want them to say and what you need to do to start impacting perceptions, so that those might be a couple of the first things people think of or say about yourself. The messaging is for them. I do want you, when you get feedback from folks, say thank you for all of it. It's all helpful. You want to make sure that you think about how you're attracting people's attention, what they're looking for. They're not looking for big, long descriptions. They're looking to find solutions to their daily problems. They're looking for outcomes and specific skills and impact. They are also more interested in themselves and how you can help them than they are about your prior companies. They're not going to hire your company that you're in today. They're hiring you if you're looking for a new role. So they will be interested in you if they can quickly and easily understand that you can be useful to them. So again, you really want to think about how they speak, what they sound like, so that when you're sharing your information with them, they are, drawn to you and wanting to spend more time with you. So again, what you say and how you say it depends on who you're targeting. Clients, prospects, recruiters, consider what their values are. What are their preferences? How do they like to work? Avatars or personas of these folks could help you to think about framing your own brand, framing some of these ideas, both planning on what you want to say and checking back when you practice. Listen from that point of view to evaluate what messaging might be the most resonant. I also want you to think about what you learned at Yale when we were talking about the customer. The integrated curriculum talks about learning to develop a deep understanding of customer behavior, integrating that understanding across an organization, and aligning the organizational structure to satisfy current customer needs and adapt to changes in customer needs using tools from economics, psychology, and sociology. Again, you know more about branding than you might give yourself credit for. You're just not used to applying what you know to yourself. Again, we're playing in a multimedia world. There's a lot of visuals, especially when we're playing with LinkedIn. I do want you to think about the power of both pictures and the power of stories. Stories are memorable. We can relate with stories. So really to think about how do we actually use both stories and images to leave strong, memorable impressions that people might share. Again, branding's multimedia. We can also use videos or other content to contribute to and grow your brand. So please be thoughtful and intentional about all of it. This is an interesting one. I spoke to somebody at one point who had as a cover photo a really colorful, beautiful picture of a succulent. It was a cactus. And when I stepped in and asked what was it about that photograph that, that they pulled it in for, it was colorful. But I was curious if a spiny cactus was aligned with the brand and the impression that they wanted to leave, where they were looking for a very team-oriented organization. As another example, a headshot in a city might not play well if you're really trying to communicate as having a great love for an environment. So you want to make sure that you're highlighting things in your photographs and your images that are aligned with the brand image that you're trying to have people remember about you. Think about how you're communicating with people and what to communicate in your 1,000 words. If you're in a space of telling a story or sharing an image, consider your limited medium, people's attention spans. Choose your frame and choose the level of detail. If it's an initial connection, you're not going to share a whole lot. You're sharing just enough to whet somebody's appetite and get them interested. You also want to know where you are in the relationship. You're not sharing too much too quickly. As people become more invested, they're going to lean in and they're going to ask to learn more. When it's their idea, it's much easier for them to remember what you're sharing with them. And they have context where it relates to what they care about in their own personal lives and businesses. If you share too much too soon, it's not going to be in focus for them. So be careful. You'll definitely increase the level of detail over time as you develop these relationships with folks. Again, successful brands communicate powerfully through simple, memorable stories. We experienced this a few days ago for those of us who watched the Super Bowl. Commercials are simple, memorable stories that either draw connection to or worse, have people feel indifferent from or step away from brands. So think about the stories that you share. Do people see themselves participating in those stories? And do they see value in the interaction? And again, engaged audiences remember and share those brief stories. Bringing it back to job search, you want people to remember you and make referrals. That's how most people in the world today are getting really outstanding jobs. Going back to some of our previous webinars, not everything's posted. Many people are actually finding opportunities through their networks where things are coming to them without them actually having reached out for them. So another exercise for you to think about in our time or after the time when we wrap up, 5 things. I've got a couple of things here for you to think about. If someone were to read your resume, what 5 things would you like them to remember about you? I share this because I reflect back to a number of years ago. I was doing some coaching at the New York Public Library, speed coaching after the 2008 financial crisis. I was one of dozens of coaches, and we had hundreds of people going through this these lines of tables where they were handing resumes and saying, what do you think of my resume? I didn't have time in the 10 minutes or 15 minutes I had with each person to really give them a thoughtful review of the resume. So I asked them when they gave me the resume, when I'm done reading this, what 5 things do you want me to think about you or know about you? And they would have to stop and think about that. So they weren't intentional about that up front. So they didn't have a grasp of their brand. And then when they finally came up with their 5 words, and I asked them to please share with me where in their resume were those words, they weren't. So it makes it really hard for me to think of those things or remember those things about you if you haven't shared them with me to start with. So that's why I share that story. Another idea is when you think about your next opportunity, what 5 things are important to you from the perspective of your personal values and measures of success? What's going to be a great opportunity? I want to make sure that we're inviting those things in and people remember that as part of who you are, so that you might get really great referrals. Another easy one is just 5 things. What are 5 words people would think of to describe you? What would they say? And it can be a kind of a fun exercise to go through and ask a couple of people. Maybe they're people that were in your groups at Yale. A great opportunity to reach back and reconnect with people if you haven't talked to them in a little while, because they do have strongly held beliefs of you that were formed potentially years ago. And they can be often really helpful to you in your networking today as you're looking for your next opportunities, because you do have such strong bonds with them. So again, you can't create or communicate a really meaningful brand or memorable brand without this reflection. If you're having trouble focusing on yourself, it could be helpful for you to think about what 5 things would I actually say about somebody else. That might help you to unstick your thinking a little bit. What qualities about them do you appreciate? What makes those people memorable? In what ways can you count on them? Again, that might help you to kind of think differently about them and what might apply to you. In addition to basic questions, what you want to be known for and what you enjoy, there's details and nuances that you might want to kind of consider for you in terms of your broader vision for your life. And again, that goes back to thinking about looking back on a life well lived. What are the types of things that you've done? And each opportunity that you say yes to as you move through are going to build towards that or take you further away from that. So again, taking that time to really know yourself is incredibly valuable. Again, if you want to be paid well and live happily, you're going to want to invest in this so that you can get that strong ROI for yourself. If you don't have a brand right now, or if you don't have a conscious brand, we'll say, because we all know from the earlier discussion that we have one, you don't need a whole lot. We're going to just leverage a few basics to open doors. That's really what kind of some of these elements do for you. If it's shabby or non-existent, that's okay. A simple strategy with some thoughtful, well-crafted basics is way better than too much information that creates confusion, dissonance, or is dismissed, worse yet, by people as things that are not relevant. So your brand is about what you're offering in the future as well, not what you've done in the past. So you want to also be thoughtful about not highlighting what you're doing today, but rather thinking about what are the job titles I'd be excited about in the future? What's the impact that I'm looking to grow or build? And these are the elements that we're putting here into these basic brand elements. These are all quick connect tools. If you think about the elevator pitch, the goal of the ride up or down is to create that connection and an appetite to follow up, not necessarily to close the deal or express your life story. Have you ever seen a headline and said, I need that, I'm interested in that, I'm going to read that article? That's what we're going for here. We're creating that interest. With that interest, you're going to follow up, and you'll take things a deeper step with each, take things deeper with each step that you take, in a way that's tailored to your specific audience that you're talking to at that time. I do love LinkedIn as a crucible in which to kind of play with and craft and hone your brand. The platform offers real-time feedback about what you're doing well. It offers tips. You can observe content engagement and profile views from others. And many people I've coached have remarked to me that they see a strong correlation between amendments and profile updates that they do with content engagement and profile views from recruiters and calls from other people. When LinkedIn was launched in 1993, it was really just an online resume. It is so much more than that today. If you're willing to invest a little bit of time, there is a course listed in our career resources on the SOM website that I highly recommend. It will help you to really make the most of the tool in all regards, from best-in-class advice regarding your own profile, how differently to make connections, how to do research using the university tool and company tools, as well as other ways to leverage content strategy and job applications, and even learning tools that are offered in the platform. So again, you can find that on the resources page of the career resources on the alumni portal. There's also a great resource by Blue Steps, who you've heard us speak about in the past as well. They did a webinar for us just a few weeks ago that's posted on the Career Alumni Webinar Resource Library. Blue Steps offers a global guide to personal branding for executives, and that might be another one to kind of spur your thinking about some of these things. A quick note about the LinkedIn About section. Many people blow that off, or they're excited about, kind of a lengthier professional bio. That About section is going to be looked at a lot more than a formal bio might be. And I also want to highlight the idea of the hook when you're just looking at, kind of what I refer to as the billboard, just the top where you've got the background photo, your headshot, your headline, and a couple of logos where you went to school in your most recent company. You can see 2 lines of your About section, but that's it, just 2 lines. So you want to make sure that there's something powerful in there that's going to differentiate you and have somebody be interested in clicking through to read more. Calling yourself a seasoned executive isn't that thing that's going to differentiate you. The other thing I'd say about LinkedIn is it's a great opportunity for you to have people know a little bit more about you. Your resume is going to be pretty focused on job content. Again, you've heard us talk about in prior webinars, the STAR framework: situation, task, action, result. That's going to be a big part of your resume. LinkedIn is an opportunity for you to share a little bit about who you are and what it would be like to work with you. So, so take that advantage to create connection with people in that way. So I said this when we started, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. We've just covered a lot in the realm of building your brand. It all comes back down to this. What are people saying about you? Hopefully you now have a few ideas about that, or about what you'd like that to be. Next, we're going to move into talking about putting your brand more out into the world. There's so many ways to broadcast your brand right now. And your brand follows you and it precedes you. It's been broadcast to people that you don't even know about. And some people haven't received your signal because you're not on the right frequency with them. It's super important for you to have brand consistency over time and across channels. Think about, again, some of your favorite brands. You can explain to others what you might expect them to offer, what their promises are. If they were to try it, it could be a restaurant or a hotel or food, even Yale SOM. It's true for both experience and product. If you're inconsistent, again, this can create discord for the recipient, and that uncertainty has the potential to break down trust wherever trust you have previously built. And we've probably all experienced this, where trust is broken, it's sometimes difficult to build back. So watch out as well, because if there's an inconsistency between what you might have on a resume potentially or what you might have on LinkedIn, some companies just toss those out because, again, that risk is more than they want to handle. Integrity and authenticity is again, I said earlier in the presentation, kind of a core element of most successful brands. And then finally, we've all heard stories of people who have been called to account for inappropriate photos or content in social media. So again, you want to think about, where is my brand, and in what ways is it being broadcast? One more thing I'll say here, now that we're living so much of our lives, both in person with kind of our closer friends and family, and online, it's possible that people are hearing about us or seeing us in ways that we hadn't previously thought of, where personal and professional are crossing over. So again, the consistency and really being thoughtful about who you are anytime that you're out in the world, online or in person, is really important. It's also a benefit, because sometimes you might actually find some of your greatest opportunities and your greatest fans are people that you work with at your church or synagogue, or you volunteer with your children in terms of a school project or a sporting event. And those people may be where you find your next job opportunity, not necessarily by scrolling through things on LinkedIn or with people you've worked with previously. So again, the brand broadcast is helpful in both regards if you think about who else might help you and the types of questions that you ask people when you're in the world. Super important about not just what we say in our brand, but how do we say it to have it be engaging. I do want you to be enthusiastic about what you talk about. I want to make sure that there's no question marks at the end of statements you say about yourself. I talked to somebody recently who was looking for a very senior role. And I asked them, how does that type of role show up? How does a partner in a law firm show up, or a CEO show up? Do they ask permission to be a partner or a CEO, or do they show up as a partner or a CEO would? So, kind of conduct yourself with that dignity and gravitas, be conversational when you're sharing your brand and your ideas. And I do want you always to be there with that intent to connect. So it is back and forth. It is a dialogue. How you say it is so important. And you can think about a great message that people can't hear. I'll go back to this idea of our online video, right? If you've got a great message and people, kind of can't get through the static or are, not seeing a confident presentation and they kind of disregard the content, we're missing big opportunities. So this is incredibly important. The title of our session today is Articulating Your Personal Brand. So I just wanted to kind of play with words there for a moment. I'm a big fan of language. To articulate something is to express it fluently and coherently, pronouncing clearly and distinctly. To do so fluently is to do so in a smoothly graceful and effortless manner. To do so distinctly is clear and distinguishable by the senses, very noticeable or apparent. I would expect that few of us listening today would think about branding as effortless. So again, it's going to take a little bit of practice. Practice your pitch out loud. Remember that it's for your audience, so it might come out a little bit differently each time. Every time you speak to a new person, your brand helps people to know what it's like to be in relationship with you. Are you timid or awkward? Are those the feelings you're trying to convey? Probably not. So again, practice. It gets easier, I promise. Did I mention it's a good idea to practice? There's a lot of things to think about when we do practice. Branding is not about instant gratification. It takes work. It's a long game. You want people to lean in, to listen, to engage, to remember, and to share. If you'd like them to be open to speaking to you again and willing to recommend you to their networks, you'd like them to believe that you not only have certain skills and experience, but that you'd also be a great person to work with. And that when they share you, you're going to actually make them look better, right? You're accreting to their brand. And you also want to let them know you're open for business. People that are broadcasting their current company as their working title as their LinkedIn headline aren't necessarily showing people that they're open for business. If you're not getting referrals, please check that last point. Are you actually making an ask? Are you letting people know that you are excited to meet new people and you are excited to explore new opportunities? I'll tell you, when I actually launched my personal coaching practice years before I actually joined Yale, I would tell people about my practice, and people would, kind of hear, wow, this is going great. I totally see why you're doing that. And you're enjoying it. I wasn't getting referrals though. And I stopped and I thought about it, and I asked a few people. I wasn't asking for them. They thought I was full. And what I wanted more than anything else was a referral, because while I might have been busy this week, I needed to actually fill the pipeline for next week. So be careful. If you're not asking, you may not actually be as clear as you think you are. It's not implied. There's so many ways to practice. As I said a few minutes ago, you can practice with friends. You can practice in a mirror. You can practice recording yourself on the video. Say the words out loud. It's not enough to think them. Trust me. Know your content well enough that you can share it, again, conversationally, not just according to a script. Just really quickly touching on the points that are here, your nonverbals, how you're showing up in terms of your facial expressions, your eye contact, hand gestures, body posture. Again, where you framed in the screen, right? We're not down there. We're kind of really, kind of showing up in a way in person or on screen that gives people a sense that you're engaging. You are not speaking in a monotone. You have appropriate pauses in your conversation. You're modulating your speech in a way that's pleasant to hear. And you're also using good words. And we're not using a a lot of those words and fillers. So really think about how you're showing up, and is your content answering the questions that are most important to the audience? So lots of things to think about here. I also want to remind you that brands evolve. This is from last week. I don't know if you even noticed that Google Chrome changed their logo. It's not a big change, it's a subtle change, and they have their reasons for doing it. I'm not sure if, kind of this is one that you're feeling really, really strongly about, but I did just want to point out that sometimes there's subtle shifts and sometimes there's big shifts in branding, and you need to communicate them both really clearly so people understand the story and how it works. Your brand has evolved throughout your career, again, knowingly or unknowingly, and it's going to continue to. And again, your brand is how other people see you, not necessarily how you see yourself. So share and listen and get feedback, and you'll make more adjustments. You have a choice whether you actually engage in this, if you intentionally craft your brand and your story, and whether you share it with the world. I know some people who have great stories and they're timid about sharing it. Please don't be selfish. The world needs you, and somebody's up at night waiting for you and looking for you. And if you aren't sharing it, they can't find you. So stop being so selfish with your gifts there. If the world knows you're there, and you're open for business, and you're listening and you're getting feedback and you're asking questions, I promise you're going to actually get engagement. And if you need help with it, reach out and book a coaching appointment. Do be careful about changing your brand just for the sake of getting attention or copying somebody else. You might remember at the start of the pandemic, a couple of brands created social distancing logos, and not everybody thought those were such great moves. Some people were much more excited about those companies who actually took all of their efforts and they retooled to create PPE and sanitizers and things like that. So you want to think about your brand as not only being what you say and how you show up, and pretty pictures of, kind of how you frame it. It's also what you do. And people are watching that, and you know that what you do has a strong impact on how people remember you. Kind of just start to summarize things here so we can get into your questions to the extent that you have any. Brands seek to communicate regularly with their customers. Again, they're available, they're out there. They show that they care so that they can deepen that relationship and that commitment. And they also sometimes use humor, and sometimes they're very serious. It depends. And both are appropriate at different times. Above all, though, they're seeking to build trust with their audiences. So as we think about you, as we think about your personal brand, I do want you to recognize that you do have a brand that is undeniably, authentically you. You might not have found it yet. It is there, though, to be discovered. Whatever you say and however you say it, I do want you to please be true to yourself. Do the work to know who you are and what you value most. And again, be unapologetically authentic. That's the only way you're going to find your people. Doing that work that you find meaningful with an organization and people that you respect in an environment in which you could thrive. Again, if you're not clear about your brand, if you don't do the work, if you say yes to what you've always done, the likelihood of you finding that really sweet spot where you can be the very best version of yourself personally and professionally, it's going to be a lot harder. So moving into wrap up, I'm hoping that in this brief time together, that you're leaving the session with both some new tools and some perspective that you consider about what's possible in your brand, and inspiration also to do the work, to craft your personal brand that's memorable and repeatable and that catches attention, piques curiosity of the right people, leaves room for your audience to engage and ask questions. This is a fair amount of work, and it's not going to happen, as I said earlier, overnight. So I do encourage you to take small steps. Again, it might be peeking at that LinkedIn course that I mentioned. It might be spending a little bit of time writing out some of the answers to those questions. It may be, just starting off thinking about somebody else's brand, or thinking about, Yale's brand or the School of Management's brand. We just recently went through a new branding exercise at the School of Management to hopefully enhance what people believe and feel about us, So I do want you to, kind of decide on what small steps that you might take today. I do see a question about the course that I mentioned. I'd love to tell you where to find it. If you do go to the SOM webpage and you click on the 3 bars at the top right corner of the webpage, you'll see a menu come up and it will say you can look for alumni. And when you find alumni, then you'll click on career, and then you'll see a bunch of different things, including career resources. So the course Land the Perfect Job with LinkedIn will be located under LinkedIn under career resources. So hopefully that helps with that question. And I would love to remind you and open up for more questions. We've covered a lot quickly. I'm not sure how much you're ready to dive into right now, but I do want to remind you that wherever you are in your career journey, we are here to support you. And if you're considering a future change, actively seeking out a new role or contemplating just generally your career growth, we do have content and advice in that growing library of alumni career webinars that might help you. So have a peek. You can find a list through the alumni portal, and here's a link here. And with regard to copies or other webinars that might be relevant to this particular topic, a couple others that we did and that you might remember are Clarifying Your Offer. That was back in September of 2020. That's clarifying your personal offer, which is an element of this branding. Powerful storytelling we talked about in July of 2020. And most recently, in November of 2021, we talked about optimizing your LinkedIn profile so opportunities find you. So all of those are out there for you. And I also wanted to remind you that those of you who are here today, you will also, in addition to getting a copy of the webinar, the recording, you're also going to get a copy of the deck and my comments. I also want to remind you and invite you to the next career webinar. We are going to have our own alum, Abby Adlerman, talking with us about landing your first board seat. She's the CEO of a company called BoardSpan. So I expect that's going to be a very exciting and informative conversation. So with that, I'm going to bring us back to our Q&A page and invite anybody to ask anything you have about branding generally, personal branding. I'd also love you to take a few moments now to share your feedback. And I want to say a big thank you to my colleague in Alumni Relations, Kayla Heaslip, without whom we wouldn't have any of these alumni webinars. She's behind the scenes making it all happen. So Kayla, if you'd share the survey link in the chat, that would be really helpful. And again, thanks in advance for taking a few minutes to share your feedback. We really do value it. As a reminder, if you do want to make a coaching appointment, you can do so through the alumni portal. And that's where you can actually see the schedule of available appointments and choose something that actually works for you. And I am, at this point, not seeing any open questions. Oh, no, there's one. Let's see. This is helpful. Taking a pause from the last corporate role and working on what I want to do next. How do I reflect this transition time on LinkedIn? That's a great question. We've talked about this a number of times in recent webinars. So again, as I said, today I pulled a number of ideas together in this session, some of which will have related to prior webinars. Anytime you have a break, I do want you to own it. I encourage people that have worked their entire career and have never taken a vacation to say to people, I actually took a break, or during COVID, right? I had an opportunity to take a pause and spend time with family, which I think many people can respect and understand. So it is owning it, and it is also using that time. You're probably not just binging on Netflix. You're probably doing some other research, and as you're talking about reflecting on what you do next, you're doing some reading. You can maybe see the blurred bookshelves behind me. There's so many different things to read about and to come up to speed with, and to think about, how do I take the work that I've done in the past and bring that forward, and in what ways do I want to engage in play. Actually, I'll plug a webinar that we did last May with SOM alum Jeff Schwartz. We talked about his book, Work Disrupted, and we talked about the future of work and how things are changing. So we really are, with the pandemic, at a place where we can, kind of reflect on, in what ways do we want to participate next. So, I just let people know that you actually, did take a break and you engaged in some rest, relaxation, to the extent that you could, maybe some travel, and also some personal development where you were exploring some of these ideas. So own it, no need to hide it. Another question: what's a good way to get feedback besides asking, what is my brand? Well, there's a couple of questions that you could ask people. I encourage folks to ask, just simply, what do you, when you think of me, what am I known for? What am I good at? If you were to say, I had a colleague one time reach out to me and say, you're the one that always connects people. You always know where everybody is. Or you're really good at asking questions. You can see just how they say that may help you to think about how you put those skills together in different ways, and where they might be useful. It could also be helpful for you to do something like take an assessment, Strengths Finder. That may help you to have some language about what are some perceived strengths in a straight up assessment, that you can also, kind of explore and ask about as well. But yeah, what's my brand, probably isn't going to get you the right information that you're looking for. You're wanting to see, do people think of you for the types of problems you want to solve? Or asking people, what do I do better than anyone else? Those types of questions. So those are a couple. If you want some more, kind of specific coaching regarding your own personal brand, again, I encourage you, don't hesitate to reach out and make an appointment. If you want to make a career shift, someone's looking to make a career shift and they're worried about changes in LinkedIn, alerting to coworkers that you're looking to leave. There's a couple of things to think about there. First of all, when you actually adjust LinkedIn, it's possible to turn off the notifications. So people won't see it unless you, in fact, kind of turn them back on. Unless if they go look at your LinkedIn, they can actually, kind of see what it looks like currently, but you can turn off those notifications. The other thing I'd say about your brand is, in large part, it's true for where you are today and where you are, where you're going. If it's not a huge shift, you're going to be able to kind of share the story. And again, it's a little bit more personal. If you're playing with the about section the way I described, where you can express a little bit about where you've come from, and also a little bit about kind of what you're excited about or interested in learning about more in the future. So that's not necessarily saying you're looking, but it's letting people know and building that bridge between, from where you are to where you'd like to be. Yeah, again, this can be kind of incredibly personal. I encourage you not to be afraid of making changes. Also, you can actually look at some of those changes that you might make and say how, again, it's true where you were and it's true where you are, and it might be true where you're going next. I've shifted my LinkedIn headline a little bit, but I used to have, I help successful leaders get out of their own way so they can have the impact in the world that they're meant to. You might notice I didn't call myself a coach in that, because it doesn't matter what you call me. It matters if you think that I can help you. So the title isn't so important, but I was clear about a couple of things. Who I help successful leaders. I could help anybody or everybody, but I really love focusing on successful leaders, helping them get out of their own way. So just because we're successful doesn't mean we don't sometimes get stuck, so that we can have the impact in the world that we're meant to, right? There's a promise there, a brand promise. If you work with me, you're likely to get unstuck and have the impact that you're looking for. So you might think about your current brand, your current role, and think about what's true across all of them, more in a space of continuum, as opposed to, having the headline be, I'm looking to leave my job. So hopefully that helps with that question around career shifting. And again, we can work together to come up with a more specific strategy. Let's see here. Another question we have, I'm glad that you found it helpful. What's the best way to get candid feedback about my brand so I can establish what it is and then whether it matches what I want my brand to be? Well, this is a great question, and I think some of the kind of the questions in the worksheets that I put out earlier might be where you start with this one. I take the time first to say, what do I want my brand to be? Play with those avatars or those personas. Who am I writing this for? And then you can start sharing some elements of it with friends, colleagues, maybe people, classmates, and simply ask, the 5 questions, right? What 5 words would you use to describe me? What 5, kind of roles do you think that I would be really great at? Or a number of things like that, to just get some flavor back for where people are, what people see. And if you then have rapport with them, you could say, well, I'm looking to try to get this. What's missing in my profile and what I'm sharing that has you not thinking of that? And it really is exploratory, and there's small tweaks. This is also kind of important. You don't want to change everything all at once. Sometimes, because then you can't figure out what is the thing that's attracting people or not attracting people. Another example, I had a few people that I worked with, also more locally in Connecticut, after the 2008 financial crisis, in a career transition support group. And every single week, I had every single person in the room say their brand or say their elevator pitch out loud, as a way of practicing in front of live people. And I remember one person in particular who had this belief that work needed to be work, right? It was kind of the 4-letter word. It's something you needed to do. And one week he shared with us what he really loved. And he was so excited about aviation. And the next week, he shifted his elevator pitch to talk about that thing that he loved. And he lit up when he shared that. And it was really interesting, because the next week he lost that, kind of excitement around it. And he went back to the old elevator pitch. The room erupted. And they said, no, go back to the other one. And they had him pull that back in. So that's another thing you could do, is if there's others that you're looking to, if you're thinking about a shift, reach out to a couple of people who might want to engage in this work with you. This is work that many people would benefit by having partners supporting them. So that's where I'm go back to your old groups from Yale SOM when you were on campus. Ask them. Again, they already know you, and you can help to share with them. They care about you. What you want to go, where you want to go. They might offer you some nice suggestions as well. So those are just a couple of suggestions that I have. But just being really clear with people about the type of feedback. That would be actually one other thing I'd say. When you're asking for feedback, don't just say, "Hey, what do you think?" Ask your questions specifically so that they might share that, right? I'm specifically interested in, what you believe my capabilities might be in presenting, and if you would recommend me for that or not, and any other suggestions you might have. So those are a couple of ways that you might get some candid feedback. I think we have time for one more question, and I think I have one more question. So let me see if I can get in here. Can I offer my opinion on the Swiss Army knife approach versus the finely tuned instrument? How do I know which approach might be best to a particular conversation? That's a really great question. That's a listening question. It's really, there's a piece of knowing who your audience is and not launching in to your answer. I used my old headline example of I help successful leaders get out of their own way so they can have the impact in the world that they're meant to. I used to use that at cocktail parties when we used to have cocktail parties. And I remember one time when I was in a group of people and they went around and everyone was, a successful leader and they were talking about, this is what I do and this is what I do and this is what I do. And I just sat back and I didn't speak up first. And when they all expectantly looked at me and said, "What do you do?" I said, "Wow, I actually help people like you get out of your own way." And remarkably, I actually got, 2 meetings out of that conversation where people followed up with me after and said, "What is it that you do?" So again, you're looking at what's the nature of the relationship. And if we think about, kind of how we consume media, a newspaper or magazine article or an internet article, whatever it might be, we look at a headline first. So if we know who our audience is, we might be able to think about what is that high level headline. And again, I shared, earlier that we're going to go to different levels deeper as we get to know people a little bit more. So I don't necessarily want you to say, "I'm a Swiss Army knife, I can do everything." I do want you to own the fact that you are really capable in many different ways, and what you choose to speak about in a conversation may be different based on who you're talking to. There's a great book called Range that you might want to peek at. I believe it's David Epstein, and he talks about why generalists thrive in a specialized world. And if you think about the complexity of our world as well, right, having this kind of great ability across a variety of different topics is really important. I was thinking about and speaking to somebody earlier today about consulting models, right, where we might have kind of functional expertise, and then we might have industry expertise, and then we might have overlaying elements talking about sustainability or technology, AI, data analysis, blockchain implementation. There's so many other specializations within the industries, within the specializations. So you don't know what to pitch or what to share until you know who you're talking to. So the short answer to that question, if I can, is to say, first you want to listen and know who you're talking to, and maybe ask them a couple questions about themselves first. Then it makes it a lot easier for you to share what they're going to care about most about you. And they'll also actually, feel a bit more rapport with you for actually having been listened to. If they know that you care about them and you're offering up tailored suggestions and feedbacks that's relevant and resonant to them, they're going to be that much more invested in actually, supporting you and helping you as you're seeking to share your brand out in the world as well. That's all the time we have today. I hope that you found our time together useful. And as I said before, I am here to answer your personal questions if you do reach out and make an appointment for coaching. And just to remind you that you do have an amazing brand. You just might not have found it yet. And I can't wait to see it when you do. And I look forward to you sharing it with me. Kayla, again, thank you for being behind the scenes with us. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.